They say time moves fast in football, but at Manchester City it flies as if chasing a goal only the most ambitious minds can truly see. And at the center of this planned, calculated storm built to win everything is a man who has never allowed himself to become complacent. Pep Guardiola, perhaps the greatest architect of ideas modern football has ever seen. And when rumors began to circulate, suggesting he could swap the pitch for an executive chair in some European club, doubts started to rise like dark clouds over the Etihad. But Pep, as always, did not hesitate to dispel any illusions. He was direct, firm, almost cold. He said he could never see himself in a suit and tie, commanding meetings, delivering institutional speeches, or taking on presidential roles. He is a coach, and that is tattooed on his identity, not only on the skin, but on the soul. Guardiola made it clear that when his chapter at City ends, he will rest, disconnect, perhaps even disappear for a while. But he will not swap the pitch for an office. He will not be president of Barcelona, nor an ambassador for anyone. He lives for training, for the smell of wet grass, for Champions League nights. That is his essence. And this brings a double feeling for City fans. On one hand, relief, because it means that until the end of his journey, Pep will remain fully focused on the team, without political distractions. But also a sense of unease, because if he does not envision any other role in football, that could mean his departure will be total, abrupt, and the club will have to prepare for a new era without any shadow of Guardiola guiding decisions behind the scenes. In the Etihad corridors, names are already whispered. Andoni Iraola, currently in the Premier League with an excellent understanding of positional play. Vincent Kompany, idle and tactical disciple. Others, quieter, but equally studied. And all this while Hugo Viana, the new sporting director, assembles the great decision-making chessboard of the future. While the future once seemed distant, the new generation is already taking shape. One of them has a first name and surname, Vitor Reis, a center-back born in Brazil, shaped at Palmeiras, polished by the elite of the City football group, a player who, at just 19 years old, already carries strong declarations about his destiny, words spoken by those who knew him up close. João Paulo Sampaio, Palmeiras youth director, stated without hesitation that Vitor Reis has the level to play 4 World Cups as a starting center-back for Brazil, and it was not merely motivational talk. It was almost prophecy. When he arrived at Manchester City, he was still a gamble, a project that demanded patience, development, and understanding of the system, but Pep liked what he saw. Not just the technique, but the attitude. However, as City is an ecosystem filled with names like Ruben Dias, Gvardiol, Stones, and Akanji, the ideal plan was to send him somewhere he could play, make mistakes, learn, and evolve. That place was Girona, which became a laboratory for young talents. And that is where everything began to happen. Reis did not just play, he dominated. In La Liga, no under-20 player played more minutes than him. No one intercepted more balls. No one evolved so quickly in such a short space of time. He learned to perform under pressure, against attackers testing his physicality, intelligence, and courage. And he responded with maturity, game reading, and an almost uncommon calmness for someone only 19 years old. And it is at this point that Carlo Ancelotti, Brazil's national team coach, enters the conversation. A Palmeiras executive advised him. He said that if he wanted a defender for the future, he should observe Vitor Reis now, before he becomes untouchable. The advice came at the right moment, because City knows they have a gem, but still do not know how and when to fully utilize it. And while many eyes are on Endrick, Estevão, Lamine Yamal, and other prodigies, Vitor keeps moving silently, but with firm steps, without fuss, but with authority. Pep Guardiola sees something that many still do not see, and that same vision was applied in the analysis of a winger emerging in the Bundesliga with impactful numbers and electric personality. Fares Chibi El Mali, the name gaining ground in Manchester City's strategic conversations. A 19-year-old winger with the energy of a veteran, confidence and humility, according to Nagelsmann. determination, and attacking instinct, according to City scouts who went to analyze him closely. A player who, in just a few minutes, contributed to 6 goals, who forced FC Köln to reassess his contract and mark him as a renewal priority until 2030, who caught the attention of Bayern, Dortmund, and now Manchester City, and most importantly, who impressed Pep. Guardiola has already watched videos, analyzed his movements, observed his positioning off the ball, understood his ability to switch between winger and creative midfielder. The profile appeals not because of dazzling stats, but because it fits the playing style, the idea of width, and the demand for intelligent aggression. And when Pep is interested, the club prepares the ground. But it will not be easy. El Mali is comfortable in Germany, has growth projections there, and will only leave for more than $40 million. That does not scare City, but it requires planning, especially because there are decisions to be made about Jack Grealish, who is living an unstable phase, and Bernardo Silva, who could once again become a target for major transfers. City plans the step, but never accelerates without direction. Meanwhile, Calvin Phillips' situation is the opposite. A player who arrived with expectations, with a high price tag, with the idea of being a strategic replacement for Rodri. But he never found his place. Between injuries, unsuccessful loans, and few opportunities, Phillips became a privileged spectator. He only played in the League Cup, and when he did, it was more to maintain rhythm than to truly compete. Now, with Nico Gonzalez arriving for $50 million and dominating the defensive midfield role, Phillips has become even more distant. Wolves want him. It is not a desperate move, but a strategic one. Loan or permanent transfer. Both the player and City begin to see that perhaps this is the natural closure of a story that never took flight. And amid all this, something curious happens. Pep does not want to replace Phillips with a like-for-like player. He is not seeking numerical replacement, but functional. He intends to reshape the midfield structure concept with versatility and fluidity, something he has been studying since last season. This shows that for City, changes are not immediate responses, but continuous adjustments to maintain evolution. This is how Manchester City remains not only a champion, but restless, not only a winner, but an investigator, not only dominant, but reinvented. Pep Guardiola does not want presidency, but he wants legacy. He wants to create something that survives time, even when he is gone. And along this path, the pieces are being positioned. Vitor Reis, perhaps the future leader of the defense. El Mali, a new attacking spark. Hugo Viana, the silent maestro behind the scenes. All this while, Calvin Phillips seeks a fresh start away from the Etihad. And while the fans wait, the feeling is that something big is about to happen. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but it is being carefully built. As the backstage of Manchester City continues to quietly reorganize, an almost cinematic sensation begins to take shape. There is an invisible thread connecting all these decisions. The future. Not the immediate future of the next transfer window or a one-off negotiation, but a more ambitious, deeper, almost philosophical plan. It is as if the club is laying the foundations to preserve a technical and emotional identity that will survive even after Guardiola's departure. Something that is not only about a playing style, but about mentality. And this plan goes far beyond money, trophies, or signings. It involves conviction. It involves choosing talents who think like City, who interpret football with the same sensitivity and intelligence that Guardiola has instilled over the years. Vitor Reis becomes the symbol of this transition, a defender who not only destroys, but builds, who not only protects, but initiates. A center-back with the posture of a creative midfielder, yet with the defensive reading of a veteran. This type of profile was not valued 2 decades ago, but today it is a key asset for those wanting to compete at the top. And City, long before the others, was already trying to find these players. It was like this with Aymeric Laporte, with Stones, with Akanji, with Gvardiol. With Reis, it could be different. He does not arrive as a finished product, but as a framework. And Guardiola knows how to work with frameworks, to polish them, adjust them, slot them into systems that change every season, yet maintain the same ideology. City wants to transform Reis into more than just a player. They want to turn him into an extension of the principles that define the club. And when we talk about principles, we enter another fundamental point in this story: the emotional impact of Guardiola's choices. City fans no longer expect just major titles. They have grown accustomed to something rarer: creative dominance, playing with beauty, with rhythm, with intelligence. Winning is not enough. A message must be delivered. That was the case against Real Madrid in that epic semi-final at the Etihad, the match Guardiola cited as the most symbolic of his time at the club. It was not just a victory. It was a demonstration of precision, harmony, control. That is why when Pep says he will never become a president or a director, he is reaffirming something much bigger than a refusal. He is saying that his legacy will not be built in boardrooms, but in the memory of matches, in the ideas he leaves behind, and in the players he shapes. That is why he looks at El Mali more closely than many imagine. El Mali could be more than a signing. He could be a representation of this new generation. A winger who does not rely only on speed, but on tactical understanding. Who knows when to hold the ball, when to attack the space, when to switch play. This offensive intelligence is what separates the promising from the transformative, and Guardiola has noticed that he can be developed in this direction. Manchester City's interest does not only mean a willingness to buy, it means a willingness to build. It is not just about position, but about identity. City's squad, unlike other powerhouses, is not designed only for the present, but for how the team should play over the next 5 years. Meanwhile, other characters in this story are reaching their final chapter. Calvin Phillips represents what football always reminds us, even in the most perfect projects. Not everything works as expected. Some pieces, even if expensive and planned, simply do not fit the puzzle. And that does not mean they are bad. It means they may need a different environment, a different system, a different atmosphere. Phillips feels this. And gradually, City accept it too. A fresh start would be fair for both. With the 2026 World Cup approaching, he needs to revive his career. He needs to feel the game again, and not just be part of it. And Guardiola knows that being stuck in a highly demanding squad can be cruel for a player who still has much to offer. And this is where Wolves come in. A pragmatic, hungry team willing to bet on players who just need the right environment to be reborn. Phillips could be that case, and City would be free to move forward with the new midfield reorganization plan, because the goal is not to replace pieces, but to transform structures. The club no longer thinks about building lineups only to cover absences, but about designing models that can reinvent themselves over time. This thinking is Guardiola's greatest legacy. It is not a title. It is not a trophy. It is a mentality. The idea that football should not be static. It must evolve, adapt, transform. Pep brought to City a style that goes far beyond the game. He created a culture, and this culture is being preserved by Hugo Viana, who silently shapes the future, preparing the ground for life after Guardiola. Because sooner or later, that moment will come. But if it is well planned, it may not be a fall, but a transition. Like when Barcelona moved from Cruyff to Rijkaard, and then to Guardiola. But this time, it is Guardiola who is writing the script that others will continue. He is the one planting the ideas that may flourish even after his departure. And when that moment comes, City may not look for just the next manager. They may look for the next interpreter of this philosophy. And maybe one day the Etihad will see a team led by someone who grew up within this very system. Perhaps a former player who understood the game from the inside. Perhaps someone like Kompany. Perhaps someone who is still being shaped today. Because Guardiola does not only coach players, he shapes football thinkers. And that is what makes his time different from all others. While all of this unfolds quietly, Manchester City keep winning. But here, winning is no longer the goal. Winning is the minimum. What they seek now is to remain. To remain at the top, in history, and in the way football will be understood from now on. A club that does not wait for the future to happen. A club that creates its own future. When discussing permanence and legacy, it is impossible to ignore Manchester City's impact on the global stage. Just over a decade ago, the club was struggling to establish itself among Europe's giants. Today, it not only stands among them, but actively redefines the competitive standard of the continent. This transformation is not simply about trophies, although they certainly matter. It lies in the way the team influences modern football ideas. Many clubs have tried to replicate the style, observed the details, imitated the system, but very few have been able to replicate the essence. That is because Manchester City does not operate solely with tactics. It operates with a concept, and as abstract as that may sound, that very concept is what keeps the club ahead of its competitors. The secret lies in the clarity of construction. There is no rush, no poorly calculated immediacy. Every move is made with a view not only to the next matches, but to the next seasons. That is how it was with the development of talents like Phil Foden, who was protected, prepared, and refined until the right moment to become a protagonist. That is how it was with Julian Alvarez, who arrived surrounded by doubts about his adaptation, but was gradually integrated until he became an essential figure in decisive moments. And it may now be happening with Vitor Reis, El Mali, and other youngsters who have not even been officially announced yet, but are already being discreetly monitored by scouts and analysts who represent the club's eyes around the globe. This silent strategy is driven not only by Guardiola, but by an entire structure. The new sporting director, Hugo Viana, does not arrive to replace ideas. He arrives to ensure they continue. His mission is more delicate than it seems. He is not simply recruiting players, he is building continuity, a task that requires vision, balance, and courage to take unpopular decisions when necessary. And in this context, the case of Calvin Phillips is emblematic. It is not a failure, but a reminder that not every player fits into every system. And when the system is as demanding as Guardiola's, the filter becomes even stricter. Phillips needs to play. He needs to feel the game, gain rhythm, confidence, and relevance. Something that, clearly, he will no longer achieve at the Etihad. And City understands this. Releasing him does not mean discarding him, but allowing his career to breathe again. Wolves could be the ideal destination. A more fluid, less system-heavy environment where game interpretation does not need to be so detailed and where he could play with more freedom and protagonism. And if he shines there, he could even return to the elite stage in time to dream of national team call-ups and a World Cup. City will not make it difficult. It will make it easier, because modern football is also built through sustainable relationships. Meanwhile, the club's attention turns to the future of strategic positions. The midfield remains one of the central pillars of Guardiola's philosophy, and that should not change even after his departure. The system, which combines control, circulation, positional aggression, and immediate post-loss reaction, requires specific interpreters. They are not just good players. They are thinking players. And that explains the interest in profiles like Nico Gonzalez, who arrived with personality, excellent spatial occupation, and tactical maturity, unusual for his age. It is no coincidence that he was signed even with Rodri already in the squad. The objective is not direct replacement, but expansion of possibilities. And it is this logic that also applies to the analysis of Fares Chaibi El Mali. Pep likes players who can change the dynamics with a single touch, not just dribbling, but off-the-ball movement, decision-making, spatial awareness. El Mali has these qualities, and that is why, even with Grealish, Doku, Bernardo, and other strong names, City keeps watching. Because the idea is not to replace players, but to build generations. City no longer wants simply to maintain a strong squad. It wants to build a chain of interconnected talents, capable of sustaining concepts over the coming years. And that explains why decisions that seem isolated are, in fact, interconnected. This interconnection does not concern only the present, but the inevitable moment that approaches, the post-Guardiola era. The question is not whether he will leave, but when. And City does not simply want to prepare for that departure. It wants to be ready for it. And there is a huge difference between preparing and being ready. Preparing is reacting to circumstances. Being ready is anticipating them. City works with anticipation. It is shaping pieces not only to form the team, but to sustain the philosophy. It is observing coaches who think deeply about the game, who understand the fluidity of positional football, who know how to read contexts and adapt systems without destroying principles. And it would not be surprising if, in a few years, the new coach were someone already within City, or someone currently working under direct influence of the Guardiola model. Vincent Kompany emerges as a natural candidate, not just because of his identification with the club, but because he has assimilated important elements of positional play. Andoni Iraola is another name under study, for his tactical reading and his capacity to adapt systems without losing identity. These are profiles that would not try to copy Guardiola, but follow the most intelligent principle of all: continue evolving from what has been left behind. Meanwhile, the Premier League remains a battlefield of styles. Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, Newcastle, and even Aston Villa have well-structured projects, but none of them have something that City has: intellectual continuity. All of them have strong ideas, but they still depend heavily on who is in charge. City is building something that can survive even managerial changes, and that is rare, very rare, because it is not just a football school, it is a school of thought. And that is how Manchester City is outlining its future. Not with noise, but with precision. Not with speeches, but with choices. While some search for a quick fix, City builds a solid one. While some clubs react to the market, City shapes the market. While many work by seasons, City works by cycles. Cycles that begin, develop, and renew. They never end. Because, as Guardiola once said, football is made of eras. And the City era is far from over. And it is precisely for all these reasons that Manchester City's moment is so special. It is not just about victories, cups, or trophies. It is about construction, vision, and legacy. About understanding that every decision, every young talent monitored, every tactical adjustment, and every silence in the Etihad corridors is part of a bigger plan. A plan that does not end with the departure of a coach, nor with the arrival of a new star, but that continues to renew itself each season, as if the club were always one step ahead of the others. Guardiola may one day say goodbye, but his impact will remain not only in memories, but in the way City thinks, plays, and evolves. And that is why following this journey is so fascinating, because City is not just competing for titles, it is shaping the future of football. If you have made it this far, it is because you truly live this passion and understand what is happening. So now, it is your moment to be part of this project. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications, because the next updates will bring even more details, exclusive analysis, and behind-the-scenes insights that no one else is revealing. Here, you do not just receive information. You understand what is happening at Manchester City and what is yet to come.